In the dead of night on August 9, 1942, in the tropical waters off Guadalcanal, the United States Navy suffered the worst open-sea defeat in its history. In about 37 minutes of chaos, a surprise Japanese attack sent 4 Allied heavy cruisers to the bottom and killed over 1,000 sailors. The ambush nearly shattered the American campaign in the Pacific before it had even really begun. This is the story of the Battle of Savo Island, a brutal lesson paid for in blood, and how the U.S. Navy clawed its way back from one of its greatest failures. Section 1. The High-Stakes Gamble. By August 1942, the Pacific War was balanced on a knife's edge. The incredible American victory at Midway 2 months earlier had stopped Japan's eastward expansion, but the Imperial Japanese Navy was still a powerful and battle-hardened force. The Allies knew that to start the long march to Tokyo, they had to go on offense. Their target? A remote jungle-choked island in the Solomons, Guadalcanal. The real prize was a nearly finished airfield at Lunga Point. If Japan held it, they could threaten the vital sea lanes between America and Australia. In Allied hands, it would be a critical stepping stone for the island-hopping campaign north. On August 7, 1942, under the codename Operation Watchtower, the 1st Marine Division stormed the beaches of Guadalcanal and the nearby islands. Guarding them was a powerful flotilla of American and Australian warships, commanded by British Rear Admiral Victor Crutchley. Their one job was simple but essential: protect the vulnerable transport ships as they unloaded thousands of Marines and tons of critical supplies. But this protective screen was stretched thin, and its command structure was confused, exhausted, and dangerously overconfident. The sailors had been at their battle stations for 2 straight days, fighting off Japanese air attacks in the sweltering heat. As night fell on August 8th, a tired sense of relief settled over the fleet. They thought the danger had passed. They couldn't have been more wrong. Section 2. The Dagger in the Dark. When news of the American landings hit the Japanese High Command in Rabaul, it sent shockwaves. The commander of the new 8th Fleet, Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa, knew he had to strike back. Fast. Even though he was working in what he called an information vacuum, he sensed the urgency and decided to lead a daring counterattack himself. He hastily scrambled a formidable strike force, 5 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and a destroyer. His plan wasn't just audacious, it was borderline reckless. He would lead his squadron on a high-speed dash down the 600-mile channel between the Solomon Islands, a treacherous passage soon to be nicknamed the Slot. They would arrive after midnight, smash the Allied naval screen, destroy the transports, and then escape before American carrier planes could find them at dawn. Mikawa had 2 decisive advantages. The first was his men. The Imperial Japanese Navy had obsessively trained for night combat, turning it into a deadly art. Their lookouts had eyesight honed by relentless drills, able to spot ships in the blackest conditions. The second advantage was technological. The Type 93 torpedo, which the Allies called the Long Lance. It was the most advanced torpedo in the world. It carried a massive warhead, ran faster and farther than any Allied torpedo, and because it used pure oxygen, it left almost no wake, making it nearly invisible at night. Admiral Mikawa was sharpening a dagger to plunge into the heart of an enemy that had no idea what was coming. Section 3. A Chain of Failures. As Mikawa's force raced toward Guadalcanal on August 8th, a series of Allied errors paved the way for disaster. An American submarine, the USS S-38, spotted the Japanese ships, but its report was delayed and brushed off as insignificant. Later, Australian scout planes also sighted the force, but their reports were again delayed and crucially misidentified the ships as seaplane tenders, sowing confusion instead of alarm. On top of these intelligence failures was a disastrous breakdown in the Allied command structure. Vice Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, the overall commander of the naval expedition, was growing anxious about his precious aircraft carriers. Citing fuel concerns and losses to his fighter squadrons, he made the fateful decision to withdraw his entire carrier task force, taking the fleet's only air cover with him. This left the invasion force completely exposed. That evening, the amphibious force commander, Admiral Richmond K. Turner, called a conference aboard his flagship. In what might be one of the worst-timed meetings in naval history, he summoned Admiral Crutchley, the screening force commander, to attend. This pulled the one man in charge of the entire defensive screen away from his post just hours before the attack. Command on the scene fell to individual ship captains, with no one in overall charge. The Allied screen was split into 3 groups. The Northern Force, with the cruisers USS Vincennes, Quincy, and Astoria, patrolled one channel. The Southern Force, with HMAS Canberra and USS Chicago, guarded the other. Farther west, 2 radar picket destroyers, USS Blue and Ralph Talbot, were supposed to provide early warning. But their patrol patterns left a huge, unobserved gap, and their radar was overestimated. To make matters worse, most ships were at Condition 2, a reduced readiness state that let half the crew rest. The Allies were tired, overconfident, and blind to the approaching threat. Section 4. 37 Minutes of Hell. Just after 1 a.m. on August 9th, Mikawa's column hugged the coast of Savo Island and snuck right between the 2 American picket destroyers, completely undetected. At 01:33, Mikawa gave the order, "All ships, attack!" His own float planes dropped brilliant parachute flares, perfectly silhouetting the unsuspecting ships of the Southern Force. Mikawa's flagship, Chokai, opened fire as a spread of long-lance torpedoes sliced through the water. The Australian cruiser HMAS Canberra was hit almost instantly by torpedoes and over 24 large-caliber shells. Power failed, her turrets froze, and in less than 2 minutes, she was a burning, crippled wreck. Beside her, the USS Chicago had her bow torn off by a torpedo. Her captain, Howard Bode, made a disastrous decision. He failed to fire warning flares or issue a clear warning to the Northern Force, a failure that sealed their fate. Having shattered the Southern Force in minutes, Mikawa's column wheeled north toward the 3 American cruisers of the Northern Force. Incredibly, they were still unaware of the chaos to their south. Some sailors saw the flashes of light, but thought it was just lightning. At 1:50 a.m., the Japanese ships flipped on their powerful searchlights, pinning the American cruisers like bugs in a jar. They opened fire from both sides, trapping the unprepared Americans in a deadly crossfire. The USS Astoria's crew scrambled to their guns, but it was too late as she was systematically torn apart by shells. The USS Quincy, caught between 2 Japanese columns, became the target of nearly every ship Mikawa had. Engulfed in flames, she sank with her guns still firing. The USS Vincennes was hammered by an estimated 74 shells and at least 2 torpedoes, sinking within minutes of the first hit. The main engagement had lasted just 37 minutes. Section 5. Aftermath. Iron Bottom Sound. Admiral Mikawa, having won a stunning and total victory, now faced a critical choice: press his attack on the defenseless American transports just a few miles away, or withdraw. Fearing a daylight attack from American carriers whose location he didn't know, and with his ships scattered, he chose to be cautious. At 2:20 a.m., he gave the order to retire. While his decision remains controversial, the damage was already done. The rising sun on August 9th revealed a scene of utter devastation. The waters around Savo Island were a slick of oil and wreckage, where the survivors of 4 proud cruisers clung to debris. The Quincy and Vincennes were gone. The Astoria would sink by midday. The crippled HMAS Canberra, too damaged to be saved, was scuttled by an American destroyer. In a single, brutal half-hour, the Allies had lost 4 heavy cruisers and suffered 1,077 killed. The Japanese, in contrast, had only minor damage and 58 casualties. The Allied naval screen was gone. Admiral Turner had no choice but to withdraw his remaining ships, leaving 16,000 Marines on Guadalcanal with only a fraction of their supplies. They were now isolated and alone. The body of water where their protectors had died would forever be known by a grim new name. Iron Bottom Sound. Conclusion. Lessons paid in blood. The Battle of Savo Island stands as the U.S. Navy's worst defeat in a fair fight. It was a catastrophic failure on every level. A complacent command structure, a breakdown in communication, and a shocking underestimation of the enemy. The U.S. Navy had radar, but its crews weren't trained to trust it or use it effectively. They had the ships, but they had no real plan for fighting in the dark. The Japanese, with their superior optics, devastating torpedoes, and relentless night combat training, had delivered a masterclass in naval warfare. The defeat was a brutal, humiliating wake-up call. The Navy immediately commissioned the Hepburn Report, an investigation that pulled no punches and unflinchingly detailed every mistake. The lessons learned at Savo, paid for with the lives of over 1,000 sailors, led directly to sweeping reforms. The Navy revolutionized its approach to battlefield intelligence by creating the Combat Information Center, CIC, on every ship. It drastically improved radar training and, most importantly, developed new tactics specifically for night combat. While Savo Island was a tactical disaster, it wasn't a strategic knockout. Mikawa's failure to destroy the transports allowed the Marines to hold on to their fragile foothold on Guadalcanal, and the hard-won lessons from that fiery night forged a new U.S. Navy, one that was smarter, tougher, and more lethal. The sacrifice of the sailors who went down in Iron Bottom Sound was not in vain. It was the terrible price of adapting, learning, and ultimately winning the war in the Pacific. Chai CTA Thihi. If you enjoyed this deep dive into naval history, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon for more stories of strategy and conflict. Drop a comment below and let us know what battle you'd like to see covered next. You can also support the channel directly and get access to exclusive content through the Patreon link in the description. Thanks for watching.